Welcome to Dominate the Nation, the first 2019 show. We're going to be talking about Kamala Harris today. I'm your co-host, Maxine Doogan in San Francisco.
I am Domina L. in Denver, Colorado. Welcome.
Welcome. I got so many phone calls on Kamala Harris over the last couple weeks. I don't know why I got those phone calls, L. I don't know why.
I know why. You've been around that region for decades, and you've got the dirt.
I do have the dirt, and we've done several, protests against Kamala Harris, like when she was the state attorney general here, and she targeted Backpage, with those fake charges that got dropped. When she voted for the Fight Online Fake Sex Trafficking Act, as I call it. She voted for it along with Trump, so she's kind of like Trump. In fact, there's a whole bunch of ways she's like Trump, and we're going to be talking about all that today.
Yeah, earlier we were talking about, and I'm fascinated by that, the history, of when she was first introduced, or what's premiered on the scene, back early on.
Yeah, back, it was when they first brought her and they were shopping her around to all the private, not all the private, but all the Democratic clubs here in San Francisco, that they set her up with some private meetings in some members' homes and they invited some of us to come meet her. And I was invited because I was a member of the Harvey Milk Club, and so was my mentor, Daisy Anarchy. So Daisy Anarchy, of course, had been working on the dancer issues for a long time. And she actually knew Kamala Harris because she and Kamala Harris worked on the San Francisco Sexual Assault Task Force together. Daisy was trying to get help with addressing the sexual assaults that were happening inside the dance clubs, because the dance clubs had just gone through this metamorphosis where all the old clubs were individually owned. Deja Vu came in and bought those clubs one by one and installed these private booths. And the installing of the private booths led to ladies being sexually assaulted inside the clubs, where customers were demanding certain sex acts from the ladies. And so Daisy was trying to get some attention on this. And so she was at the Sexual Assault Task Force where Kamala Harris was. And, the task force didn't really care. They didn't really want to hear about it. They just decided to go ahead and make some cards, like flyers, to be able to pass out at all the, drinking clubs, not the strip clubs, but like the bars and stuff, to ladies who were being roofied, putting stuff in ladies' drinks, and they were being drugged and sexually assaulted. That was the big problem, they decided. Mm-hmm. So their solution was to make flyers about that to warn people. Whatever. So when they brought Kamala Harris into the Harvey Milk Democratic Club, Daisy was just like, rolling her eyes, like, this woman is not going to do shit, but, we're going to go through the motions, and we're going to be there, we're going to ask the hard questions, right? So, they brought Kamala in, to somebody's, private house, and we all went and talked to her, and, so they were kind of, like, training her how to respond to people's concerns. Because our political club is very progressive. We're a little bit harsh. We're known for being harsh. People like me are, we don't, mince words with what's going on. And, we want to ask candidates. And we ask candidates. We don't care if you're running for dog catcher, trustee of the college board. We know that you might be running for, citywide, supervisor today, but tomorrow you're going to be running for governor, or you're going to be running for state senator. So, we want to track people on their views on a variety of issues. And one of them, of course, is on prostitution. The prostitution should be decriminalized. And that, people like the dancers deserve to have access to equal protection on their job. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
So, that's why they were bringing Kamala around in these private meetings before she actually got officially in front of our clubs, before she officially decided to run for district attorney in San Francisco. She had been employed as a district attorney over in Alameda County, across the water, like over in Oakland, right? So I know that she claims that, her parents are these civil rights activists, but, what civil rights activists in their right mind would allow their child to become a prosecutor? I mean, prosecutors are part of the, they're part of the establishment that oppresses people. They get to overcharge people and, force people to take pleas that they don't, that they didn't do. They hang people up in these court proceedings for, years. I mean, that's just opposite to what civil rights is. So I don't know what kind of people are.
Excellent points. Well, one of the topics I found extremely fascinating was, Willie Brown. I mean, we've known about her, like the reference of her referring to herself as honorary sex worker, and we could explain that here in a little bit. But, for Willie, when I saw Willie Brown speaking out about their relationship, I was pretty amazed about that. What do you know about that?
Well, when I was contacted by all these reporters when she decided to run for president, they knew that I had some connections to her. And so I told the reporters, all about her affair with Willie Brown, that the whole way that she comes to power, that she's able to run for district attorney, that she's able to get the money, from the funders to run for district attorney, that she's able to get all the political connections, like being introduced to our club in this real soft, core sort of manner, where she wasn't really going to be held accountable. That was all orchestrated through Willie Brown, through her relationship with Willie Brown, that she had a relationship with him. And Willie Brown, and he admitted that in his article on Sunday. I mean, so because I was telling reporters that, the reporters were turning around and asking him about it, so he felt like he had to address it. We don't care people have affairs. We don't care, his wife knew about all the affairs that he was having, with all these younger ladies. I mean, we're not here to pass judgment on anything like that. But what's important, I think, for listeners and viewers and voters to understand is who Willie Brown was. Willie Brown had been the California State representative in the California State for like 20 years. He was the Speaker of the House in here in California. It's a very powerful position. And there were no term limits back then. In fact, the whole way the state ends up passing term limits is to get people like Willie Brown the hell out of there. Because when you have the same people who are involved in these candidates and these hold these offices for so long, like Nancy Pelosi, like Dianne Feinstein, you end up with entrenched power. And that's what Willie Brown was. He was the entrenched power. He had a corner on all of the, funders to be able to fund candidates. He decided who was, his kind of candidate, and so he promoted them. Kamala was his kind of candidate. He says in his article on Sunday, in the Chronicle, the San Francisco Chronicle, he says, yeah, I got her appointed to 2 statewide commissions that had, great pay, so, he and she are already conspiring together about, how she's going to build her political career. And it starts out with being on these commissions and getting some name recognition out there, right? These statewide commissions, being on the San Francisco Sexual Assault Task Force, because she was going to target San Francisco as, the place where she was going to lay down her political, her political track. So now Willie, this is interesting about Willie. So Willie, prior to running for state office, he worked as a criminal defense attorney, and Sam Conti was one of his clients. Sam Conti was somebody who ran strip clubs. He's a famous, one of the, prior to Deja Vu's recognizable names in strip club ownership. Sam Conti was one of those names. Sam Conti had been charged with prostitution, running prostitution out of the clubs, and Willie Brown was his criminal defense attorney. Okay, so Willie had a lot of connections with the strip club, especially the strip club scene in San Francisco, right? So when Willie goes on and becomes mayor, so, he gets kicked out of the assembly because of the term limit, so he comes back to San Francisco and he runs for mayor. And so he's mayor from like 1996 through, 2003, I think. And so he and Kamala have their affair in 1995. So that's kind of how that all, lines up, where he's holding all these elected positions of power and is really in a big position to help her and other people, go on and, be elected to all these positions. He's known as the kingmaker in San Francisco local political spheres. If he's the one who decides, oh, you're going to play my kind of politics, he was the mayor. Of course he wanted the district attorney to be, to do what he wanted them to do. Of course he wanted, all the board of supervisors to do what he wanted them to do. So, he wielded a whole lot of power. And so what happens here in San Francisco in 1996 is that all of a sudden, all the street-based prostitution starts to be heavily busted. All the private in-call workers get heavily busted. All the massage parlor workers start being raided. But who's not being raided are the dance clubs. So it has the effect of trafficking the workforce into the dance clubs.
Absolutely.
So all of a sudden, people like Daisy, and all these other, dancer activists are working inside the clubs where they were doing $20 lap dances. Now all of a sudden, they're working next to women who are doing $20 bareback blowjobs. And all of a sudden, their clubs are being bought up by Deja Vu, and all these private booths are being installed in all these clubs. And, all of a sudden, the stage fees go from $25 to $140. That you have to pay $140 at the end of your shift, otherwise you don't get to come back to work the next day. And so there were a bunch of, and I had met several dancers who, couldn't afford to pay their stage fee, or they were behind in paying their stage fee. And, they were forced to give sexual services to the managers in the back room in lieu of paying their stage fee. They were forced to do all the sexual, they were sexually assaulted, essentially. So Daisy was complaining heavily about this to anybody who would listen. City officials, community groups, of course all the Democratic clubs, right? Mm-hmm, yeah. And, because Willie Brown was in charge, he was in charge of the police, he directed the police about who they were going to enforce the prostitution laws on, right? So that $140 that ladies were paying ultimately, in my mind, had to have gone to some sort of payoff scheme, to keep the police from enforcing the prostitution laws inside the dance clubs. So this is how Kamala comes to power, right? She comes to power on the backs of, women, through Willie Brown, that Willie Brown is involved in exploiting, that she gets the benefit from. She gets the political benefit, she gets the political cover. This is how she comes to power. And I think it's really important that people understand that. And then my particular, intersection with Kamala, starts at the Milk Club. Starts with doing some Freedom of Information acts as district attorney, where I'm asking her, I want to know how many people you've charged with 647B, the prostitution criminal code. I want to know how much fees has your office collected from people who've been arrested for prostitution? How many people have been forced to do community service because of their prostitution convictions? How many condoms have you cited in criminal cases, for 647B? These are the things I'm trying to ask here. Because in San Francisco, we have something called the Sunshine Ordinance. And the Sunshine Ordinance says that you can ask any publicly elected official or agency information and you can expect an answer within 10 days. Well, we didn't get an answer within 10 days, right? It took forever to get the district attorney's office to respond. We could see the contracts. We're looking for the contracts that the district attorney had with the diversion nonprofit. The nonprofit was called Sage back in the day. And, that nonprofit, they were all making money off the criminalization of prostitution. The district attorney would use all these charges and traffic women through this diversion program where women were giving all these false promises and they were giving the public false promises of the services that the women were getting. The women were not getting services. The women were not getting job skills to be able to transition into other types of employment. I remember one lady told me their job skills program, it went to the extent of having a copy machine.
Yeah, there was one here that it was knitting.
Yeah. And so we were trying to do some public information disclosures to look at those contracts to see, because you could see from the contracts that we finally ended up getting through a long, lengthy process, that really these contracts were about addressing the blight in the neighborhood. These contracts were not about providing ladies any services. So that was just part of their PR piece. That was part of Kamala Harris's district attorney's PR piece that they were making to the public, but that was not really what was going on. But to be able to get access to that information, finally I got her office to respond in writing to me. And they just would say things to me like, and I still have this letter, oh no, we don't have anything that you're looking for, Maxine. We don't collect that data. We don't know. And the letter they sent me, it wasn't even dated. So when Kamala Harris comes before the Harvey Milk Club, when she's already elected district attorney and she wants to run for a second term, I show her this letter, right? I stand up in front of the whole club, and the club is packed because it's an endorsement meeting. So all the people who want the Milk Club's endorsement for their office that they're running for, everybody's there, right? And I say, I did this Freedom of Information Act, and I didn't get a response. And she's just like, well, who responded to you? So I tell her the name of the person on the letter who put their name on the letter, and I said, and it has no date. You're supposed to respond in 10 days, and it's been months, and this response doesn't even have a date. How unprofessional, right? And so she kind of poo-poos me, but Maggie Rubenstein, who I'm sitting next to in the club, raises her hand to ask a question, and Maggie's just like, a little bit incensed. She's just like, hey, look, Kamala, Maxine has a legitimate question here. You didn't answer it, and I want you to answer her. I worked with Maggie says she worked with Margot St. James. They worked on a bunch of stuff together, and, Margot had told her that she was an honorary, prostitute, that Maggie was an honorary sex worker for all the work that she had done. Maggie had worked as a nurse and a psychologist, and that she was very supportive, of us. So, Maggie Rubenstein puts the B in the LGBT, right? She's, in our community, she's it. She's the it, She's done all this great work, and so, she's trying to hold Kamala accountable here. And so Kamala says to her, well, I'm an honorary sex worker too.
Oh, God.
The whole room kind of erupts with laughter because everybody knows that, she had sex with Willie Brown, and that's how she gets to be a politician.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that she has a sexual relationship with him, and she ends up with these two statewide commission appointments. You know, the definition of prostitution in California, L, says that any sex act in that has any compensation attached to it, that's what the definition of prostitution is. So, you know, that's why Kamala was saying, yeah, she's an honorary prostitute too, because, you know, she had sex with Willie Brown and she got all these benefits from here. She got all this, you know, beyond compensation. I mean, she's running for district attorney, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's just part of the crazy shit that happens here in San Francisco.
Well, it's wild. I mean, her roots, you know, and now she's running for president. I mean, wow. And knowing, you know, the people who were local, who know that her roots are, you know, what they are. And she, you know, traded sex and got, you know, political support. And, you know, it is what it is. And yet, look at all the, you know, I mean, she's just been horrible. Her record is just horrible, you know, for...
That she benefits from the system, but the rest of us don't get to.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of the elitist, you know, activities in this country that has to stop. And, you know, it has to stop. You know, they were shopping her around in San Francisco because she was a woman. And she was a woman of color. You know, so they were looking to check off those identity boxes, that diversity box. But really, you know, she's just part of the same good old boys program that brought her to power and that she perpetuates with the laws that she has decided to arbitrarily enforce. You know, there's a lot to be said, but, you know, we didn't get our answers in those public records requests. And so I had to go back to the San Francisco task force and say, hey, look, you know, I've asked the district attorney for this information. They've not responded. It's been months. And they said, well, you know, we can help you by, you know, contacting her and trying to reach out to her office and get her to respond. And if she doesn't do that, then we're going to recommend, you know, that the task force at their next meeting find her in violation of the San Francisco Sunshine Task Force. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. They reached out to her. She didn't respond. So we went in front of the task force. You know, at these task force meetings, it's like, you know, they're long meetings. You know, we had been there for 5 hours. There was a whole group of us that had gone. And, you know, after 5 hours, here comes this guy from the district attorney's office. He's like this first-year prosecutor, fresh out of law school, and he's got a stack of papers this high for us to show that he is trying to be in compliance. And the task force was not having it. They were just like, you're showing up here at the 5th hour with the stack of papers, and you could have responded months ago. You didn't even respond to us when we reached out to you, your office, and you're in violation. And so that's part of the documentation that I provided to the press, is that, you know, it violates Kamala Harris and her capacity as a district attorney for being transparent, that she's not transparent. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, God, it's just, you know, it's infuriating. You know, it's interesting, too, to see that, you know, there was a grooming process going on as well, and how politics works, you know, that this is, you know, this is not by happenstance. You know, there's people out in the world, Joe Schmo, Jane Schmo, people Schmo, you know, they kind of think in terms of, you know, somebody just decided, it's very simplified, someone just decided to run for office, you know, and then, you know, like she's dressing it all up, my parents were civil rights, blah, blah, blah. And in truth, you know, this was a long calculated purposeful, and not just on her part, but on the part of those handlers that were there. And the handlers that want to put people into, greater positions of power, and the money behind those handlers. And, this isn't messing around. This is serious, and a lot is at stake. And of course, they're going to use all the right talking points. I mean, they are masters at formulating talking points and strategy, and getting their way and making sure that the status quo remains exactly as it is. And they're going to use, all those words that are going to have people thinking, oh yes, this person is going to represent change. This is what we need. And it's just a load of bullshit.
The woman? No, she's not.
Yeah.
Her color and her status as a female, is not going to render any kind of change. She is about the status quo.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the only thing that's going to happen. For her to get up there and make any sort of presidential promises about, healthcare, Medicaid for all, no, bitch. You had a long time where you could have been supporting all that stuff all the way down the line, and you didn't.
Yeah, and you see a lot of consciousness. I've been looking at different conversations, different communities around the topic of Kamala, and people aren't falling for it hook, line, and sinker. I mean, there's a lot of people, Black community, sex workers talking about it, all sorts of different people who are like, nope, and I just hope that, I'd hate to see her as president. I'd hate it. But we totally saw this coming, Maxine, remember? Years back, we called it. We knew it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the machine, the way it works, here in San Francisco, and it's a major machine. I mean, you have to have people's permission to be able to run and to win, and you have to be able to cut deals, and they want to keep the status quo. That's what they want. And she has found that she's a go along to get along with the good old boys type of girl. That's what she is. Mm-hmm. That's what kind of candidate she is. That's why she voted with Trump. I remember when she came to the club one time, and it was right after they had shopped her around, and she officially came to the club and asked for our endorsement. And one of the questions to her was, well, what money, pockets of money are you going to get to back you? And she said, oh, I got the Shorensteins. The Shorensteins are, a notorious real estate, family, rich family here. So just like Trump, she comes, with the backing of, the big real estate that's rendered, tons of people houseless and homeless, and, all the high rents everybody's having to pay. She's part of that, that group of people, that she's going to continue that status quo. She voted with Trump on, FOSTA. He wrote it into law. She voted it into law. They're the same type of politician. They're exactly the same. Her color and her, status as a woman does not make her any way different in my mind from him. Mm-mm. She's just like him. Mm-mm. She's the same system of him that brought him to power. And she's not going to be any different. She's going to lie to the American public like she's already lying to the American public. She's a liar, and that's what she is. And she's incompetent, just like Trump. She's completely incompetent. She has shown that in the elected positions that she has held here in California, that she wants to pick and choose who she wants to enforce what laws on. That's a form of corruption right there. And that's what she is. She's corrupt, just like him. And people should, she should not be, they should not vote for her. They should not be supporting her in any way. It will be bad for you white people. Know that. Because that's the thing that was so funny about the rally she had this weekend. It was a bunch of white people that showed up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like the white people are saying, oh, now we got to prosecutor, to keep our neighborhood safe. I mean,
it's so racist, really, if you want to talk about racism, people, aligned with the status quo who want to have, a token, oh, well, she's a woman of color. I mean, that's racism. It's not, that this person is qualified or, knows what they're doing or is really being honest. This is just, okay, we're going to have, a black woman. That's our black woman to represent us. And it's insulting,
Our token woman and our token woman of color. Oh,
yeah.
My God.
Yeah, I've heard it called soft bigotry, because it's not hard, you don't see it. It's very deceptive, but she's just more duplicity, more of the same old shit that we don't need anymore.
The San Francisco Democratic Party in 2008 came out in favor of Prop K, which was our ballot measure, the citywide ballot measure, Prop K, to decriminalize prostitution and to force district attorneys like her to prioritize enforcing the rape, robbery, theft, coercion, and extortion laws over the prostitution laws. And, she came out against our ballot proposition.
Yeah, of course.
She came out against the San Francisco Democratic Party. She's the one who started in with the fear-mongering of, using the sex trafficking language, that decriminalization would, increase, forced labor in the sex industry. And that's, of course, ridiculous.
Yeah.
If people weren't criminalized, they would be able to get access to equal protection under the law.
Yeah.
Whatever you wanted. And, so she's just a liar, and she's just, I'm sure she has received campaign contributions, just like Hillary did, just like Elizabeth Warren did, from all the big antis, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And whores aren't donating to her campaign. That's kind of how it is in this country. It's who's paying and who's buying and who's selling.
Yeah.
She's a seller. Mm-hmm.
God, wake up.
That's why we're here and Dominate the Nation, is to tell people about what's really going on.
Yeah.
And,
But will they listen? Will they listen?
Well, I think they will listen. I think that people are going to shake their heads with disgust, because it is disgusting. But, you guys have the power to change this, political downward spiral that America is on, and the downward spiral economically that this country is in. And you guys can change it.
Yeah.
I want to point do it by not voting for, people like her that are the same old, same old.
Yeah. And I'll put a link down under the video where one of our activists, Starchild, when Prop K was going through its process, and he was interviewed on live television, and Kamala was there. He reminds her of her comment describing herself as an honorary sex worker on live TV, and it shows her reaction. Definitely caught her off guard, but
and she was laughing about it, because it was a joke. She was laughing, making a joke, which is what one of the commentators that wrote an article about, her comments are just these joke, off the cuff to make herself sound like she's with you, she's one of you. She's not. She is not one of us.
No.
She is not, she's not about anything like that. But yeah, we'll put all the links to everything that we have in the comment section, and please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll catch you guys all up soon in another 2019 rendition of Dominate the Nation. I'm Maxine Doogan.
I'm Damina L. Have an excellent day. Love yourself.